Kentucky has gone after defense, and more defense with their transfer selections. But it looks like now the Wildcats may be landing the best shooter in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on in to Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be discussing Koby Brea taking a visit with the Kentucky Wildcats. Quite a turn of events after it felt like UK and Mark Pope were down and out in his recruitment. Also going to discuss another player currently on campus in great Osobor, arguably my favorite player in the transfer portal right now. If Kentucky does pick him up, can he fit in this front court? I think so. I'll explain why, and to wrap up the show, we're going to talk about what could be the final piece for the Wildcats in Elijah Hawkins, the point guard that I think Mark Pope needs. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind you guys, we are free and available on all platforms, and if you are watching on YouTube, I would appreciate it if you subscribed to the show. If you are listening on podcast, wherever you are tuned in, I would appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I have a pretty competitive side, and we all do, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now on the App Store free or on Google Play. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky basketball currently hosting Koby Brea out of Dayton. If you have been watching this show for even a short period of time, first of all, appreciate you. Second of all, you've heard about Koby Brea. We've talked about him on the show quite a bit. If you are new to Koby Brea, allow me to briefly explain to you what this transfer portal wing is about. Again, played for the Dayton Flyers this past season. I think Koby was the best shooter in the country last season. Take a look at some of these numbers. He shot 45% on right wing threes. That made up the majority of his outside, or his shots total, not outside shots, just inside and outside. He shot 44% on right corner threes. He shot 54% on left corner threes, and he shot 56% on left wing threes. Oh, and also, just to throw this in there as well, he shot 65% at the rim as a guard. Holy cow, those are some very serious numbers to kind of digest all at once. 45 and 44% on one side of the floor, 54 and 56% on the other side of the floor. And I was talking with somebody the other day about this, about the concept of, how comfortable right-handed and left-handed shooters are on different sides of the court. And just based off of doing these transfer portal breakdowns with you guys, which it feels like we've gone through nearly 30 players at this point, you look at some of their shooting splits, and most right-handed players are more comfortable shooting on the right side of the floor. At least that's typically the case, and I can definitely say that for myself. I'm a right-handed player, and whenever I want to go and shoot, I feel more comfortable on my dominant side with my dominant hand shooting at the rim. That's just more comfortable for me. It's different for other people, and that's perfectly fine. Some left-handed shooters prefer the right-handed side. Some right-handed shooters prefer the left side of the wing/corner, whatever it may be. But whenever you see players that shoot a high percentage all around the court, or maybe even shoot slightly higher of a percentage on their non-dominant side, on the non-dominant side of the court, it really does speak to their ability to shoot the basketball, period. And so they're players worth going to take a look at and see, okay, what's their form look like? What's their situation look like? How's the offense setting them up? And Koby Brea was set up so well in Dayton's offense last season because of how much attention was drawn to Deron Holmes II, their front court piece that was just extremely dominant. Brea was like the 5th or 6th most utilized player in Dayton's rotation, but when he was utilized, he was extremely effective as a right-handed shooter from all around the court, but especially from that left side. Brea is a legitimate offensive threat. He is a shooter. Now, would he step into a situation where he can kind of start and take over an offense and maintain that efficiency? I'm not quite sure. But in a BYU Mark Pope type of system, when you've got different point guards and front court players that can pass the ball around, you could put Brea in a very similar situation and find similar success shooting the ball. If you want to look at some of his basic statistics, last year at Dayton, he averaged 11 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 1.2 assists, half a steal per contest while shooting 51.2% from the floor, 49.8% from three, also shot 87.5% from the foul line, but was not really a foul drawer. He did not really pick up a ton of fouls, which makes sense given his play style. He is a catch-and-shoot player that is really, really good off the ball. Here's another interesting statistic for you. 83% effective field goal percentage in catch-and-shoot situations. 83% effective field goal percentage. That was the best in the nation a season ago. There is no better player right now in college basketball than Koby Brea at catching and shooting the ball. Full stop. So now we get into where is he with Kentucky, right? Initially, Kentucky was one of the first teams to contact him. We got excited about it. Then Brea included Kentucky in his top 5. It was like a blue blood exclusive top 5. I'm talking Kentucky, Kansas, UConn, all the Duke, all of the teams that you think would fit in a blue blood in a blue blood rankings list. It was Kentucky along those schools, and it felt like Kentucky was still in it. Then Koby scheduled visits to UConn and Duke. And according to reports, it was pretty clear he wasn't going to schedule a visit anywhere else. He was going to look at UConn and Duke and decide between those two. So Kentucky seemingly was sort of out, at least for the moment. He ended up taking his visit to UConn, and he ended up canceling his visit to Duke. And so, okay, Kentucky fans got a little excited, and then here we are over the weekend. Matt Norlander of CBS Sports just casually mentions after Kentucky picks up Andrew Carr, Koby Brea is visiting Kentucky. Okay, cool, awesome, nice. He was supposed to visit Tuesday. I wake up this morning, Monday, April 29th, and Koby's on campus. It went from you're in, you're out, you're maybe in, oh, well, actually you're out, to, okay, well, Duke's out. Hey, now you may get a visit. You will get a visit. You'll get it Tuesday. Actually, he's here already. It just goes to show how well Mark Pope and his staff are operating behind the scenes, keeping these things quiet. They got him here a day before they were supposed to get him here. And here he is with great Osobor. And at some point here in the next 48 hours, I would assume, Elijah Hawkins out of Minnesota. The best shooter in the country is currently at Kentucky. Things right now are going in Kentucky's favor with him, according to what people are reporting. Trilly Donovan, appreciate you, brother. If Kentucky picks him up, it completely removes the need for Aiden Mahaney, who just went from St. Mary's to UConn. Kentucky had him visit over the weekend, and Mahaney ended up choosing the Huskies. Best of luck to him. I think he's going to be a great player there. But this completely removes the need to have him because Brea can play that shooting guard role. He can also play at the 3, where somebody like Jackson Robinson could play, who just, by the way, officially entered the transfer portal today. Is Koby Brea about to commit to Mark Pope in Kentucky basketball? It sure feels like things are heading in that direction all of the sudden because of the Huskies got their shooting guard, and now their other shooting guard that they had visit is now visiting Kentucky after seemingly them being out of the race, so to speak, for a moment. I would assume this is not reporting, this is not official. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that Kentucky's in a pretty good spot. He could commit in the middle of this recording. I don't know, or he could go elsewhere. Who knows? But I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see where it goes. If Kentucky picks him up, I think it's going to be great for Mark Pope and his system. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about Brea? What do you think about this situation? And would you like to see him as a Kentucky Wildcat? All right, we've got another player on a visit right now that I want to get to here in just a second. Great Osobor from Utah State. He flew in alongside his parents from England. Let's talk about how he could fit in Kentucky's front court next season, because I think it's going to be a bit of a tight squeeze, but I think Kentucky can find a way to make it work. Before we dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Monopoly Go. We got to pause here to talk a little bit more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Flag on the play, flag on the play. We've already talked about this a ton recently, but there's just so much stuff to talk about in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's board. So I've talked a lot recently on the show about how there's a great competitive side to Monopoly Go, right? Where you can kind of go up against your friends on all these different boards and steal from their vaults and have a great time. And I've had a great time using it with my friends who got me hooked on it a few months ago. But there's also the ability to kind of join forces. And I think that's really, really important. There's so many different ways you can play this game. And the more you win together with your friends, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much more to get, including unique stickers. You can trade with friends to complete big albums for big prizes on top of that. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Super, super fun stuff. And there's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on the Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, if you have not subscribed to the show already, I would greatly appreciate it if you went ahead and did so. If you are listening on podcast, wherever you're tuned in, follow along there. We got a lot to talk about here over these next few weeks with Mark Pope constructing his upcoming roster for the season. It's going to be super fun. Would love to have you. Also, if you've not joined the Locked On Kentucky Discord, just a place for all kinds of fans of Big Blue Nation to go and talk about what's happening with Kentucky football, basketball, baseball, anything you want Kentucky related. Link is in the description. It's free to join, just a place to kind of hang out and chat. All right, let's talk here for a second about great Osobor. We've talked about him a lot, actually, like days before Coach Cal. It was even rumored that he could leave for Arkansas. I started on the show by saying, hey, this kid entered the portal. I think Kentucky should contact him. And then Cal didn't, and then he left for Arkansas, and now Kentucky, underneath Mark Pope, has contacted him, and they got him on a visit. Last night, he ended up flying in, and he brought his parents in from England, and so they are currently on a visit today. Just to give you the brief rundown here about the Utah State big man. Last season, great Osobor averaged 17.7 points per game, while shooting 57.7% from the floor. Also grabbed 9 rebounds per game, almost 3 assists per contest, 1.3 steals, 1.4 blocks. The 6'8", 245-pound big man did a little bit of everything for the Aggies a season ago. Super, super fun team. Look at some of his numbers. He's the number 5 player in the transfer portal right now. He shot 63% at the rim a season ago. That was 86% of his field goal attempts, so he really is operating around there. He's got long arms. He's got a very solid offensive rebound and defensive rebound rate. He also has a 16% assist rate, which is not typical for big men, I should say. He can handle the ball. He's got a 5% block rate, so he can play defense. He can rebound. He can pass the ball. He's effective at the rim. He's a really good player, Mountain West Conference Player of the Year, over almost 18 a game last year. Just a really, really well-rounded player that I would love to see Mark Pope pick up. He could commit by the end of this recording as well. And let's say he does for a second. Let's just theorize here. If great Osobor does end up playing for the Kentucky Wildcats, can he really fit in this front court with Andrew Carr and Amari Williams, the 2 players Kentucky has picked up in the portal from Wake Forest and Drexel? I think he can absolutely play in this rotation with the Wildcats. Last season, great Osobor averaged 33.6 minutes per game. Started all 35 games for the Utah State Aggies. Amari Williams has been the primary starter at center for Drexel for going on 3 years now. Now that he's transferred in for Kentucky, my guess is that Osobor and Williams would have to split time at the 5. And you may say, well, why wouldn't they end up playing great Osobor at the 4? Well, they absolutely could. And that's where kind of the logic comes in here for getting all three of these players enough playing time and keeping them content, right? Andrew Carr last season for Wake Forest was their 4. He was their primary 4, but he was not like statistically like a go-to guy. And quite frankly, I don't necessarily know if he's going to be that at Kentucky. Osobor was the go-to guy for Utah State. Amari Williams, actually, believe it or not, was the go-to guy for Drexel. I think this is the way Kentucky would do it. You would start Andrew Carr at the 4. You would start Great Osobor at the 5. Amari Williams would come off the bench. And when you wanted to rotate Amari into the game, you would either take Osobor out and put Amari in, or you would slide Osobor up to the 4, take Carr out, and put Williams in. And just make sure you have 3 really good shooters to go along with those guys, because those guys don't take threes. And then Bob's your uncle. There you have it. Great Osobor is getting 20 to 25 minutes per game, splitting time between the 4 and the 5. Amari Williams is getting his 25-ish minutes per game. Andrew Carr is getting his moments as well, getting about 20-ish minutes per game playing the 4. He can split time with Osobor there. I think that's probably the world that Kentucky wants to operate in. And let's say Osobor doesn't start at the 5, right? Let's say that he somehow comes off the bench. Let's say that he is your sixth man, which would be just crazy to think that the Mountain West Player of the Year could do that, but let's say that happens. Williams is your 5. Carr's your 4. You want to rotate him in, take Williams out, put Osobor in. You could do the same thing. You could just have him coming off the bench. Or, honestly, you could start Osobor at the 4, Williams at the 5, have Carr come off the bench, and then Bob's your uncle that way. I mean, I think they're Kentucky, because of how versatile Great Osobor is at 6'8", I think Kentucky can live in a world where they have the Utah State product playing the 4 and the 5, getting his minutes that way, Williams being a true 5, and Carr rotating in and out whenever Osobor's not in the game. I think that's fine. I think that's absolutely fine. The thing that you have to be aware of is making sure that you have enough outside shooting for those guys. And if you can get a guy like Koby Brea, and you can get a guy like Elijah Hawkins, who we'll talk about in just a second, you really start to see the pieces coming together for the type of system Pope wants to run. They want to get out, they want to shoot threes, they want to run in transition. If you have a guy like Osobor who can handle the ball and pass it, if you have a guy like Williams who can pass the ball, and if you have those two guys running in transition with 3 really good shooters, it opens up the floor for those 2 guys who don't shoot outside shots to run to the rim and flat out destroy some people. It is going to be super fun to watch. I think if Great Osobor commits to the Kentucky Wildcats, he's going to be a very explosive player, a high-profile bucket getter. Cannot wait to see what he does. Best of luck to him wherever he goes, but I really do hope he chooses UK, because I think it'll be great for his NBA potential as well. So Great Osobor, Amari Williams, Andrew Carr, I think they can all live in that front court in harmony, and I think everything will be just fine there. What about Elijah Hawkins, the player I mentioned just a second ago? What about him, the point guard out of Minnesota? I think personally, right now, if Devon Smith does not end up coming to UK, I think Hawkins is the final piece Kentucky needs to round out what could be a very good 8-man rotation. Let's talk about Hawkins, what he brings to the table, and kind of what his status is with UK. In just a second, before we do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time. Right now in the NBA and NHL, baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to slam dunks to home runs. It's all on an app that is safe, secure, super easy, and super fun to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is also brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is the place to go and get your MLB tickets this summer and fall. Already got a couple of tickets just a couple of days ago on GameTime for a Braves game here in just a few days. I'm super excited about it. And let me tell you, using GameTime was the easiest thing I have ever done. Being able to go in, immediately get my tickets, no hidden fees, everything's up front. You get all in prices, views from your seat, and then GameTime has this really cool thing called the GameTime Guarantee, which it means if you find a ticket in the same section in a row for less elsewhere, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. GameTime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets even faster and easier because prices actually on the GameTime app, they go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. Super awesome. No other place to go and get your tickets. You have to go and take the guesswork out of buying tickets by downloading the GameTime app, creating an account, and then using code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. Super awesome. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, wrapping up the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. It's Dawe hanging out here with you. All right, so let's talk here for a second about what I think could be the final piece for Kentucky basketball's roster. Well, not their roster, but for like their legitimate rotation. Elijah Hawkins is a guard out of Minnesota. He's similar to Devon Smith that we've talked about recently on the show. We've talked about Hawkins too. Hawkins last year averaged 9.5 points per game. Shot 39.3% from the floor, 37% from beyond the arc, averaged 3 rebounds, 7.5 assists per game, and 1.6 steals per contest, while also averaging a career low 2.7 turnovers per game. So 7.5 assists to 2.7 turnovers. Yeah, I would take that right now. Yes, please. No, I don't need fries with that. Have a nice day. A 5'11", 160-pound guard. Not the tallest player, not the most physically overpowering player, but he's picking up steals. He can knock down an outside shot, and the man can dish the ball like nobody's business. It is super fun to watch these wraparound passes, these balls with spin on it that come off the floor in a way you don't anticipate into the waiting hands of a Minnesota player. It's super, super entertaining basketball, and he would be somebody that I think would fit Pope and what Kentucky wants to do on offense perfectly, especially considering the personnel Kentucky's gathering. So many different players Kentucky's going after / has committed so far. They all play well off ball, right? Andrew Carr, one of the best cut, curl, post-up scorers in the country. You give him the ball and let him score. He doesn't create it for himself. Amari Williams is a center. You give him the ball in pick-and-roll situations. You give him the ball in post-ups, even though he didn't do that quite often. You let him create off that. You don't necessarily let him create for himself a ton. Otega Owe was a really good catch-and-shoot shooter at Oklahoma last year and shot 37.7% from beyond the arc at 6'5". You give him the ball, you let him create off of that. You don't let him create for himself. He's one of the worst players in the country shooting off the dribble a season ago. You need someone that can take the ball off the dribble, get a bucket themselves, or find somebody else that can. I think Elijah Hawkins would be that piece. He shot 43% on left break threes. He shot just as much from the left side of the three-point line as he did at the rim last season. And he was actually almost just as efficient from outside the arc on the left side than he was at the rim. So let this kid shoot threes in transition. Let him do work. Let him cook. He shot 34% on right break threes, which was 20% of his field goal attempts. So he's average from one side, really good from another, and shoots collectively just as good as he does outside as he does inside, to go with a 38.9% assist rate, which was 9th nationally a season ago. Amari Williams would love this man. I put that in my notes just a few days ago. I'm going to reiterate it here. Amari Williams loves him. If he's taking a ball screen, he's going to the rim to score, or he's going to find somebody who's open. He works really well off of these ball screens. He doesn't spot up a ton. He doesn't score a ton in transition. He doesn't score a ton in ISO, but he does know how to set his teammates up beautifully. It's very fun tape to go and watch. Hawkins, I think if you get him, you get Brea, you have Owe, you have Osobor, you have Carr, you have Williams. All of a sudden here, you've got Colin Chandler and Travis Perry coming off the bench too, in this rotation, so to speak. You have a point guard, you have a shooting guard, you have a small forward, a power forward, and a center, and technically you have two centers, or a power forward and a center and a tweener, so to speak, with Osobor. Regardless of whether he starts or not, he's still versatile enough to play both positions. This is a win for Kentucky right now. They are winning in the transfer portal. If you're subscribed to my Substack, which is free to go and subscribe to, I write some different pieces about college basketball and football over there. I just recently put out a piece talking about how Mark Pope is utilizing the transfer portal the right way. And I took a look at the way that Kentucky has, how Pope has utilized his high-profile transfer portal pieces at BYU. And all but one of them panned out, like significantly better than anticipated. At least better than you would anticipate at somewhere like Kentucky underneath a different coach or just what have you. Pope knows what he's doing in the portal. And like he said over and over, this is a selective process. And I really like the people that he selected to go select these players. I love his staff so far. I really, really like the pieces that they've gotten to commit. And I think somebody like Hawkins in a few days or in a week or whenever would be a really nice cherry on top to be like, this is our point guard. This is the guy that can go and get guys buckets when we need him to. I'm excited about it, man. I'm very, very excited about it. So you can let me know what you think about Elijah Hawkins, about Great Osobor, about Koby Brea, about whatever Kentucky's doing in the portal. You can leave all that in the comments below. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.